Hey there, dance studio owners, and welcome to the Transform My Dance Studio podcast. This week, we have a very special episode for you as we celebrate our 400th episode of Transform My Dance Studio with you. And what better way to get the celebrations rolling than by sharing with you the best moments from some of our most memorable episodes over the years. Today, you'll be hearing from some of our favorite podcast guests, including Mia Michaels, Mandy Moore, Todd Herman, Kim McSwain, Kingsley Grant, Noah Fleming, Adrienne Dorsison, and of course, the host and founder of the podcast, Clint Salter. Over the next hour, you'll hear highlights from the industry's best when it comes to training your dancers, delighting your customers, and managing your finances. You'll also discover our all-time favorite mindset strategies and leadership tips to help you thrive in business and beyond. We hope you enjoyed this 400th episode extravaganza.
Now today I have a very, very special treat for you. One of our guests, the amazing, creative, and really inspiring choreographer, director, Mia Michaels. I spent an hour with this wonderful woman who has really impacted the dance world on a serious note over the last few years. A lot of you may know her from So You Think You Can Dance. Recently, she choreographed Finding Neverland on Broadway, and she's just doing some amazing work with artists, dancers, teachers, and studio owners. I'd love to know how you continue to be creative. Like, what do you draw on to stay fresh and current, and I guess true to yourself as well? What kind of keeps you in that state of being able to create? Because for our studio owners who might have to teach like 30 routines in a year and they're like, I need an idea, or I'm stale. I mean, where do you draw upon for your creation of the work that you do?
I pull all my stuff from my life, inspiration of my life, situations, things I come across, from paintings to pictures to some character that walks by. I'm very creative in my mind, so I can make something this big turn into miles and miles long. I like to take a normal story and make it very, very extraordinary. I think being aware of the magic that is around us at all times, I think is very, very important as an artist, that we can get so caught up in the mundane and our everyday life, and we have a schedule and we have to do this and we have a class to teach and we have this, that we lose sight of the magic that is happening around us all the time, at every single moment of our life. And it's really about being aware of how to unveil the norm of, oh gosh, we have this to keep, got to do this, and see that everywhere you look, every single thing that I see right now, whether it's the curtains behind me or this lamp or the texture of a pillow or that you can actually turn it into art in some way, because you can take the textures and go, oh my gosh, that would be great for a costume. Or the light, oh, how cool would that be if we filled the whole stage with these light posts? And then, and every single thing around us could be used as an inspiration to create from. And I think that is real important, to just keep that in your radar at all times, because it's easy access to us. We just have to be aware of it and check into it. Yeah. For sure. And of course we get burnt out. I get burnt out all the time. I try to find my mini little vacations inside of my day. And whether that's meeting up with a friend for coffee or going, having or going for a walk or I try to once a day, try to take, whether it's an hour or if I can, I really try to take my mini vacations inside of my everyday, because that is the only thing that can keep us like feeling like we have some sort of balance.
Yeah, I think that's so important for our studio owners to hear, because as you can probably appreciate and have seen with the amount of dance studios that you've been in and witnessed and grown up in, is that studio owners give their life to their business. Like, it's their identity. In some circumstances, it's who they are. It's what they breathe and what they live. So I love that you've just said, just find it in your day. Find that time in your day to say, sure, I'll meet you for lunch. How do you have to kind of make yourself do that? Like, do you have to kind of go, I've got to make sure that I've got that time for me today. Otherwise I just keep working.
I'm a very extreme person. So I work very hard, but I also look forward to playing hard. And my way of playing hard is my little mini vacations. And whether that's going to have an amazing sushi dinner with a friend of mine or taking a walk, down by the river with Lily, those are the moments for me that feed me. Those are the ones that make me just go, I deserve this because I've been working so hard all day that this is something for me. And I think that's very important that as a workhorse, like I know studio owners are, and dance teachers and choreographers and dancers, that we have got to give ourselves some nourishment to our souls in order to be able to give and to inspire our children. Because if we're burnt out, then we have nothing to give them. So it's so important.
Completely.
And, it's interesting for me too, because the older I get, the more knowledge I have, the more inspiration I love to teach even more. And it's funny because as a choreographer, director, teaching for me is very selfless. It's very selfless. Whereas choreography and doing projects and stuff is very selfish because you're doing it for you and your vision and what you want. So you have the balance of those two things are awesome. Awesome.
I love that. Do you, in keeping on that same kind of the same topic, because today's all about a mindset makeover, how do we get ready for the next 10 days for the summit, but how do we approach going into every single day? Do you find it hard to switch off? I mean, we're so connected via social media and our phones and the laptop and the computer. I mean, do you find it difficult to kind of disconnect yourself? And do you find that that's important, that you need to have that time away from technology?
I think it's very important. I try to do the rule, which I'm not good at it, but I'm trying to be better, is that it is a business, right? It's a business. So if you can give yourself business hours, stick to that. Try to stick to that unless there's an emergency and go, because other people shut it off after 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, they're done. And it's like, well, why can't we? Because I think that's important, because what is really going to get done other than creativity on your own at night, like business stuff, it's like it can wait till the morning. And I just feel like it's so important, and it's so hard for all of us to put our phones down. So hard to put that down because we have this now weird addiction to it of connection at all times, and I feel that it will take some hard work and discipline to kind of be able to disconnect. But I think it's important because it's getting crazy. I find that the social media thing is crazy because people they're building careers off of social media and not talent and not hard work. It's just like, I'm famous through social media. And it's a very interesting world right now. It's a very interesting world. So I think that there's balance in everything, and the balance of knowing how to shut off and be good to yourself is the only way that you can be a great creator, a great teacher, a great inspiration to anyone.
Now, our guest today is a 4-time Emmy nominee, a world-class director, choreographer, and dancer, best known for her groundbreaking work on the global television hit So You Think You Can Dance. She choreographed David O. Russell's Oscar-nominated film American Hustle, Shania Twain's blockbuster Vegas show You're Still the One, and also on hit television shows including Modern Family and Dancing with the Stars, which she's currently working on. And she also recently wrapped Damien Chazelle's movie musical La La Land, starring Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling. Now, there isn't much that today's guest hasn't done. She's hardworking, passionate, and still makes time to teach workshops for up-and-coming dancers, which is why I wanted to get her on the show today. Please welcome the delightfully talented Mandy Moore, not the singer. Hello, Mandy. How are you?
I'm so good, Clint. Thank you. That was an awesome intro. Thank you.
Mandy, I'd love for you to just share with us. I know you kind of talked about your Edge experience and not getting that scholarship, and I know you've been in dance competitions where you haven't got first place. I mean, how have you taken those lessons, and I guess again that resilience piece, to be able to keep on getting back up again after you've been, after someone said no to you? I mean, how do you kind of face those challenges and keep working through it to get to the next spot?
I think after you have a good cry, you always have to have like a good cry or like a good, a moment in the car where you talk to your windshield. We're like, these guys are idiots. They should have chose me anyways. Like you have to have like a little moment with yourself. I think for me, I always understood, or I had hoped, that my career was going to be longer than just that one moment. That the picture was actually a big picture, that it's not, it wasn't just about not getting the Madonna concert or the Madonna tour. Like, I remember I made it all the way to the end and I was like, oh my God, I could, this is my dream to go on tour with Madonna. I should have probably known in the moment, she's never going to hire me, P.S., because I've got blonde hair and I'm a white girl, so like never going to hire me. But, in the moment, I so wanted it. And when I didn't get it, I remember being devastated. But I also understood that that wasn't the end. That wasn't the only thing that was ever going to happen for me, because I had other thoughts and dreams that I wanted to pursue. And that, I think, is what helps you through those moments, is understanding that it's just not the end. It's just one part of this very long journey and the long career that hopefully each dancer will want to have. I know I want to. I want to be able to do this as long as I can. And when I can't anymore, I hope I have enough grace to be able to find the next thing that I'm going to be doing. And I'm sure that'll be full of bumps and bruises as well, because that's kind of how life is.
That's exactly how it is. That's perfect. What's next for you, Mandy? So you're going to wrap up Dancing with the Stars in a little while. I mean, what will you go on to next? What are the kind of big dreams and goals that you've got coming up?
Well, right after, almost 2 days after, I do the Dancing with the Stars tour. So we'll be putting that up, which is very exciting. And then I think I'm going to take the entire month of just off, because I have had with wrapping up the film and Dancing with the Stars. And so you think it was a really incredible summer for me. So I think I need a second to just marinate in it and figure out what's next. I love to teach, and I've been really busy this last year. So I haven't been able to do as much of it as I, have been used to and love to do. So I'd love to get back in the studio and teach some young dancers, and then, figure out what's next. I don't know if it's directing or continuing to produce or, the film for me was once in a lifetime. It's a brilliant project, and it was an incredible moment for me. So, of course, if I could have 10 more of those in my life, I would love that, but I'll be okay with one. I think it's just, keep on plugging, doing great work, and hopefully people will keep calling and, can hopefully get to just continue to get better at my craft.
Our guest today is Todd Herman, and he's not only the man behind the 90-Day Year, he's also an exceptionally, experienced coach when it comes to high performance. He is also a devoted dad to 2 daughters, and we just have a really great conversation around, overcoming overwhelm.
I'm constantly looking at, of all the goals or things that we could be working on to grow our businesses, what's the highest impact thing that we could implement right now in our businesses that's going to move us towards that vision that we have the fastest? And that could be implementing some sort of customer support backend. That could be implementing some sort of operational system so that we're not dropping the ball possibly when we're onboarding new clients, because that's a win for us right now. That's going to help us alleviate the attrition rate that we have with the customers that are leaving. And that's one actually area that many business owners overlook many times, is they will always have the mind to, oh, we need to go out and constantly get new customers and new customers and new customers. Where a lot of times the biggest impact you can make in your business is, well, what can you do to either reactivate the customers who left? And what can you do to build a fence around the customers that are inside of your business right now? How can you continue to wow them and give them an experience that causes them to never want to leave anyway? So, taking a look at, of all these goals and projects do you have the resources for, when you have the list out in front of you, it could be 5 or 7 or 3, whatever that number is. Which one do you have the resources for you right now? And maybe it's just a simple little thing that people could do right now, while sitting here listening, or later on is, list out those projects and just draw a scale 1 to 10 beside each one. Scale of 1 to 10. On that scale, where do you feel like you've got resources? Is it a 10? Yeah, I totally have the resources to implement that. Or is it a 1? That means it's typically going to take a lot longer, a lot more effort to get it done now I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it, because sometimes the biggest wins you could ever get in your life are the things that you don't have the resources for right now. I mean, I think you would agree, Clint, that if we ever knew all of the work and time and effort and emotional drain that it takes to be an entrepreneur, if we knew that stuff ahead of time, a lot of times we'd be scared we'd be scared away from even doing it, right?
Very much
so. Sometimes that big project or that big goal is definitely worthwhile. But when you're looking at a busy entrepreneur, busy business owner that doesn't have 8 hours in their day to be working on nothing but their business, but they're caught up in working in their business, what's a project that you can take on or get off of your plate right now that would alleviate you from being so integral to the business? And then, like I said before, the highest impact thing as well that you have.
Impact. I guess impact is dependent on the individual, because there is impact in terms of customer impact, the people that it's helping, and then there's impact on the business from a profitability standpoint, fulfillment.
Totally, from brand perspective as well, getting your name out there. But if I have 2 projects sitting in front of me and they're both high impact, one's going to take me about 6 weeks to complete, I think. One's going to take me 2 weeks. I'll do the 2-week one, because that thing is at least done. It's out there and it's working for me in the business. That's the point of building these small little bridges, whether they're big ones or whether they're little ones that are, one could be a massive 4-lane highway that we've got coming into our business. And those things are big projects and big goals. And that's fantastic. But if I can just get a walking bridge, done and completed so that it gives some group of people the opportunity to walk in, or maybe me, that project could be completing a new product or a new service. And that's a simple thing for me to do. Get it off my plate. Now it's out there. It's in the marketplace. It's working for me. It's automated, possibly. That's really important.
Now, you've touched on implementation and how important it is, and our members know how much I'm a fan of taking action, doing the right things. A lot of our studio owners have their to-do lists. Every morning they wake up, they've got a lot of things to do, and we hear a lot from our members that they feel overwhelmed more often than not. I mean, what are some of the strategies, or maybe some routines, some habits that our studio owners can get into or think about when they're looking at this list that never seems to end?
It starts with mindset, like most things. I literally just got done sending an email off to a business friend of mine who invited me to a great weekend event that it's actually on my list of skills to continuously develop. It's a great kind of, speaking type event. Now, I've been a professional speaker for 19 years. I've been paid to speak for 19 years. But because that's one of my core competencies, I'm always looking at ways of trying to refine that. And so I know what I'm really good at. And typically when you know what you're really good at, those who are pros, because I work with pro athletes, we continue to refine that and make it even more lethal. Now, I got done sending an email to that friend of mine saying, I'd love to be able to go to this. And this is right in my wheelhouse of skills I'm trying to continuously hone and develop. But I have some really big projects that I'm working on, and me leaving my business right now for 3 days would really hurt those. The other thing that would hurt is because I could go to it and I could still get all of the work done, but I'm also a dad to 2 little girls, and they need me around as well. So if I went to that event, I would be basically pulling away time from my family, because I'd have to work, extra hours in my day, and I'm not willing to do that right now. So the art. So what I'm getting to is it's the mindset of you don't have to be saying yes to everything. Opportunity doesn't live inside of a vacuum. Now, there are some opportunities that will show up in your business life that are, those are golden nugget opportunities. Those are golden eggs that, they don't come along, every week type of thing. But then we really do have to weigh those opportunities against some of the things that we're doing. And am I willing to, hustle hard on all the other stuff that I've committed to take this on as well? But you know this too, Clint, that when you're in that constant mode of just taking great action, amazing opportunities just constantly fall in your lap. Like I've got no shortage of great opportunities where my sort of quantity of opportunities, many of those would look like those golden eggs for many others, but I get a ton of golden eggs just constantly flowing my way. And so here's what I know. They're not going to stop because I'm not the person who's going to stop taking good, decisive action. So rule number one is learning to say no. Know what your resources are, know what your constraints are in your business right now, and learn to say no. Those new studio owners, there's no shortage of people that are coming up to you constantly, possibly, and giving you all this great business advice on things that you could be, should be, or would be doing if you did this instead.
Great to be back, Noel. We have a bonus session for our dance studio owners. We love a bonus session.
Everybody loves a bonus.
Everyone loves a bonus, where we're going to really kind of explore a whole bunch of different areas where it comes to customer success. And the first one what I want to talk about is peak moments. We talk about recital is like a really exciting kind of end of the year experience for our dance families. Can you tell us a little bit more about peak moments and how they impact the customer being inside of our business?
Sure. So the recital is the perfect example because it's technically at the end. It's usually at the end of a season, right? I mean, I can see the kids already getting ready for the first one right now in our dance school. And so that's the end of the experience. Now, science tells us a lot about this in that people typically remember the way an experience starts and the way an experience ends. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of ways to think about this. Think about the last favorite meal you had, right? A lot of what happens during that meal can be forgotten if you have a bad experience at the end. A 7-day vacation where you had a fantastic time, you loved every minute of it, can be ruined by the way that your checkout occurs at the end of the experience, because the mind has a way of remembering those peak moments. And so there's tons of science around this. It's all really fascinating stuff. There was one really cool study where they gave this guy these $3,000 headphones and they played this orchestra for him, and he's gasping and he's just shocked. He's never heard music and things this clear. He can't believe he's hearing these instruments coming out of this ear and that ear. And, he's just in shock of everything. He loves it. But what the scientists do is really interesting. In the last 10, 12 seconds or something, they have a jarring noise so loud that he has to rip the headphones off because it hurts his ears. And then they ask him about the experience a couple weeks later. He doesn't remember anything really about what he enjoyed and the instruments and anything. The only thing he can talk about is that damn noise at the end, that horrible, horrific screeching noise. And so this is another example of one of these things. How the experience ends is so important, and you need to pay attention to this.
And I think we have lots of endpoints, right? So we have lots of points. It might be the end of the first class. It might be when we enroll the student and they sign up and they leave the first day. It could be, there's so many different kind of end moments. Yeah.
We talk about first impressions, right? So just as important as the endings are the beginnings. The middles are often the things that get forgotten. Now, that's not to say we started talking about peak moments. That's not to say we can't do things in the middle that add to that experience, whether it's through a season. So again, we talked about things that going above and beyond, doing something that's meaningful and memorable, that can create a peak moment in there. It's something that really stands out, that we remember, that impacts us. So absolutely paying attention to the beginnings and the endings and recognizing, like you said, that you have all these interesting endpoints. So just because you say hello to a customer when they enter the studio, right? Think about when they leave. Say goodbye.
Please say goodbye.
Thank them for coming. Tell them that their daughter or their son or whoever did a great job today. And again, you can create just a powerful moment there because that's what sticks.
In your book, you talk about the Bentley and the Butler philosophy. And as you're talking about peak moments, it's reminding me of this philosophy. Can you share a little bit about this with our studio owners and some examples?
Sure. So cruise ships, if you've ever been on a cruise, and I haven't gone on many cruises, I'm not a big fan of cruises, but cruise ships often offer a butler service. And a butler service that can be paid for and you can purchase it and it creates this extra level of service. Fine, fancy hotels often have what's called a house car. And sometimes it's a Bentley. And so the St. Regis in San Francisco has a Bentley that you can actually use. You can say, I'd love to go to a restaurant and they'll let you use this $370,000 car. This is the Bentley and the Butler. Nobody goes home and talks about how they save money on a hotel room. They go home and say, hotel had a Bentley that I could use. Nobody leaves a cruise ship with a butler and says, I was okay. They talk about the butler and they say, we had our own butler where we just rang a bell and he would bring us Prosecco at any time of the day whenever we wanted. It was the most incredible thing ever. So in other videos, we talked about, examples from B2B businesses that did these little things. This is how you do the Bentley and the Butler in your own business. Think about something that is so powerful, so memorable, so outside of the box that they can't help but remember that. It creates that peak moment. It creates that thing that is so powerful. They can't help but tell people, you won't believe what our dance studio did for us. And it doesn't have to cost money. It doesn't have to be expensive. In fact, you can make the customer pay for it in some cases.
I was gonna ask you. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it can also be a service that is above and beyond, and they pay for that.
Absolutely. So with a lot of corporate clients, we talk about something like the Bat phone, which I call it, which is the Batman phone. You could give certain clients a paid level of service that's access to the Bat phone, which means any time of the day, I'm going to get help that I need when I need it because I pay for this extra service. So again, that's not going to apply to the dance studio owners watching this, but it's important for them to think about what could they offer? What could they do? Could it be a paid offering that's, something a little bit different, something a little bit more special? Maybe it's a 1 hour private session with a teacher. I don't know. Something like that, that creates that type of, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah, awesome. We talked a little bit about Disney because you had a trip there with your family recently. What is Disney doing really well when it comes to the customer experience? You talked about the prams. We love that. What else are they doing to really make you go, wow, that place is pretty amazing?
So one of the best things that I found about Disney, which I think a lot of businesses can learn from, is that when everybody, for anybody that hasn't been to Disney in a long time, it's crazy because there's so many people. It's just bonkers. And so you got to get there early and you're lined up with thousands of people and you're waiting. And it's, when we were there, it was cold in Florida, so it was freezing, but you're waiting. And you see this stuff kind of happening behind the scenes. You can see past the gates, they're getting ready. But here's the key point. As soon as those gates open, it's showtime. And so no longer did I ever see anybody doing anything that looked like they were still, scrambling to get ready. But yet I go into businesses all the time where they're open and it feels like, 20 minutes after they're open, they still haven't got their stuff together. They're still trying to figure out how to get the lights on, how to do this, how to do that.
How many times have you been like, oh, I haven't turned on the FPOS machine. The FPOS machine's warming up, or the computer hasn't been turned on yet, or the coffee's still being brewed.
So Disney, I think they recognize that this is that third stage of the customer loyalty loop. This is the experience choreography. They recognize that once it starts, they're on. And so I think when a business turns its lights on, when the time says you open at 9 a.m., you should be open and it should be go time. 9:30 isn't the time to be, checking if the bathrooms had been cleaned last night or, cleaning up whatever. It's go time now. And so we need to think about almost like choreographing a show, right? These are dancers who dance, and they, some do exquisite ballet dances where the moves are all carefully timed and choreographed. Great restaurants, for example, choreograph service. Disney choreographs this experience that once it's time to go, they're on.
She said that she's the ops manager, and a lot of times she has to go to her director to ask questions, and she doesn't want to. She wants to be able to answer these questions and be more autonomous in her role. And sometimes we think that they don't want that, and we'll just take the burden on and we'll just do it all ourselves. Literally, this is what your team members want you to do with them. They want to take things off your plate. And she's proof and prime example. This is like why we bring team members into our process, right? Because I'm like, this is not about you creating all the operational systems. This is about the buy-in from the leadership and how to create that approach to how we do everything. And your team members can help you spearhead this stuff. They want more ownership, okay? So those were some beautiful examples. Hopefully everyone has an example. And what I want you to now identify, are they not making that decision because they don't have permission, they don't have the information, or they don't have the confidence? So which one of those three things? Oh, it's all three. Okay, so for those of you who it's all three, the one that we're going to defer to is information, right? Because the way that we can confidently trust them to make a decision would be to give them at least enough information, and then we will formally hand over permission once they have the information to make that decision, which will build their confidence, right? So again, we can think about this in small stakes environments first, because you want them to build up their confidence around making decisions, and you want to build the trust with them that they're going to make the right decisions. Also knowing that they're going to make mistakes. They will. And they're humans. And you have to start understanding that your team members are humans. And the ways that I always have my biggest learnings are from some really big mistakes I've made, right? Or some small ones. So it's like, okay, how can we expect them to grow and develop if we don't give them this like safe environment to make some mistakes and fuck shit up sometimes, right? Like, right? Like, let them break some things every once in a while. They will learn from it. My dream for you is that you don't have to sign off on it. It might take a few steps to get there. That's the goal. I want the time that I want to see my newsletter is when I'm like the recipient on the newsletter and I'm like, oh my God, that's such a great newsletter we wrote. That's when I see my newsletter. Well, I think and this is a great conversation because this comes up all the time when we're like clockworking people's businesses, is they're like, oh, I feel guilty. My team member, like, I don't want them to think I'm taking this 4-week vacation. The 4-week vacation is like, it's a placeholder for what we want for your team. So you have to mentor that team member to help them understand that you're there to also grow them into their highest value on the team, right? Everyone has something to contribute. Everyone has a strength. And if we can all stay in our lane, the company becomes way more powerful, right? So it's not, I'm better than you or I'm more important than you in any way. It's just that we have different strengths and I need to stay in my lane, my zone. And I want everyone to be able to stay in their lane and their zone, because that's what allows the company to move forward faster. And this does happen through safe conversations about that and understanding what are everyone's strengths. Most of the time we don't spend enough time with our team members even understanding what they are. And so it's impossible for us to speak to them in that way, right? So understanding, okay, this is what and you might need to do some rebalancing, because if she doesn't want to be doing, it sounds like if she doesn't want to be doing the emails, what is her highest strength and value to the organization? And is there someone else who might be able to do the emails that is not you? So I think that's more confidence building for her and understanding this is what you're here for. This is your strength to our organization. And I am doing a disservice to the company by spending time there. Truly. So I think the thing is more like, why take offense to that? I'm like, you're right. I'm not. So this is something that the Savannah Bananas owner, he talks about the idea that like, he often has to pull himself back from stepping into the concession stand when he sees they need help. He's like, now they have a common language. And so when I'm talking about these concepts, like, this is going to take time to like embed in the conversations that your team members can have with you, right? But having those safe and open conversations about what is our vision. And if you've never communicated the vision to your team, that is part of why they don't understand where you should be spending your time or where they should be spending your time or how you're going to get there. Okay? Because it's not you going to get to the vision of whatever it is by you answering the emails or being the organized person, right? So understanding how we have to have those conversations and communicate that, where we're going with the team, but also being able to hold yourself back when the concession stand needs help. And they have the common language now to say, Adrienne, no. We will take care of this. You need to be over there on the field, right? You need to be coming up with the next ideas. I got the concession stand. So that's how we want every team member to feel, is that like, if I go over to the concession stand, it's a disservice to everyone. It's not helpful, right? Even though it's from like the goodness of your heart of like, I want to go to the concession stand so I can help them. It's not helpful, okay? Not helpful. I'm going to keep moving just in the sake of time. And then I will take questions if I have time, as well as come find me at cocktail hour. Okay. So 5 tools to get them to make decisions more autonomously, okay? These are some examples that I've like created and pulled from real world situations, from big companies I've seen, as well as some of our clients. So again, this is touching on that information piece. How do we get them the information that they need so that they can make the decision more effectively? Transfer of knowledge, okay? And we don't want to create dummies, because also a lot of the things that they're asking you are nuanced. It cannot have an SOP. It's going to be different every time. It's not necessarily a step-by-step, this is how you do it. SOPs are great for certain situations. For nuanced decision-making, not as helpful, right? Standard operating procedure, literally step-by-step. That's not what this is, okay? So guiding principles. These are things that you might even have a document in your company. These are our guiding principles. These are the things that we live and breathe by. And if you make a decision that puts this at play, you're right. You can't do wrong by me, okay? So fans first. I'm going to use Savannah Bananas example again. Fans first is part of their brand promise. So this is also one of their guiding principles for decision making. He has like a no policy rule at his company. There's no policies, but they have these like guiding principles. Fans first being one of them. So if someone drops their hot dog, you just give them a free hot dog, okay? Because that's just what we do. We put our fans first. Obviously, safety has to come into play here, but if a fan asks for something, like they're doing it and they don't have to go ask for permission because they understand this guiding principle. Because these decisions are nuanced. Well, last week they dropped a hot dog, but this week they dropped a hot dog and a hamburger and French fries, which is about $23. So should we do that? That question does not come through to him, right? Fans first. Make your decision. So that's something you could put into place in your own business. Guardrails. This is one I love. This is a Facebook example. So at Facebook, the engineers there are constantly creating new features, right? So if you've ever been on Facebook and you're like, oh, I have this new feature, and your friends are like, I don't have that, right? Like, oh, why can't I do that yet? It's because their engineers roll out tests to about 10,000 people at a time. They get data back, and then they learn, is this something we want to roll out to a larger test group and then put into the system, right? If they had to go ask every single time they wanted to test something like this, the bottlenecks and the waiting time would be huge. It's a huge inefficiency to have to go and ask for permission, write a whole proposal. We want to test this feature. No. And engineers are just creative. They want to build things. They just want to build things. So now you get the best recruits for your team, right? Now you get to hire all these incredible people. And what they have is a guardrail. They have what's called a do not do list. Okay, here's the things you cannot do. Anything else, go play. Okay, so that's another example of like a guardrail you can put into place. If you're like, all right, these are the things you just cannot do around this project, this area, this zone, this outcome, whatever. Here's the things you cannot do. Anything else, be autonomous in your thinking. Be creative, have fun, play, okay? So that might work. And this is a toolbox because some of these will work for the example you have and some of them won't, okay? So you need to have an array of ways to solve this information transfer.
Now, today I'm joined by a career coach, professional speaker, podcaster, and published author, Kingsley Grant. Now, Kingsley works with business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs to create a fulfilled future working in the area that they are most passionate about. You know, Kingsley, for so many of our studio owners, you know, they're probably not at the beginning of their business because I feel like that's when we still have the fire, right? Like when we've had a new idea and we start our dance studio, like we're totally into it and we're doing everything it takes to make it work. But then 5, 10, I mean, we have studio owners that have been running their studios nearly 40 years.
Right.
How do you what happens if you've lost that? Right? If you've lost that kind of get up, get out of bed, feeling on purpose, how do we get that back?
Clint, what I find is that many times, like myself, we can get so distracted or sidetracked by the bright and shiny objects. So we might be doing business for quite some time and the humdrum of that. And we get so familiar and so complacent sometimes and then distracted by these shiny objects that it takes us off our track. It takes us off what first was so burning within us. What I do is help them to revisit their story. What was that story that they had when they first began? What was it that within that story that drove a mission for them, the big why of what they wanted to do? And then I look at, okay, what are some of those obstacles that have now gotten in the way, preventing you from doing the things that used to get you up? What is that? Where's the fire gone out? And then we look at options. What are some options you could explore that will once again refuel the fire that was burning once in you? And then we look at what time frame could you now go about in getting that lit once again? And then what's a minimum viable thing you could now do within your business that would recharge or refire you so that you could continue with the passion you once had?
So powerful, and I think that's going to be so helpful for our studio owners who are in that place at the moment, right? They're not fired up. They're getting, and it's so true. Like when you say, like I'm even thinking myself, the same, like
yes.
the same old thing. And I was having a coaching session the other day with one of our studio owners in the inner circle, and we were talking about this, and they're like, our studio's doing really well now. We're making great money, but myself, I am not feeling fulfilled or creative. And, I talked to her about like finding innovation within the day today. Like, how can you be more creative in that? How do we find that innovation and creativity in the things that we're really doing, like every single day that we might get bored of?
What I find, Clint, and I think you put your finger on that very same thing while you say that the humdrum, the same old. But I think if we can reconnect ourselves with what we're doing to our big why. So the mission, what was it that I set out to do? If I set out to do something that allow people who are now involved in dance and say, well, what is it about them dancing that I can see that transforms their lives, transform their families, transform their communities, transform their world? And I tap myself into a bigger picture and remind myself every day, I'm not just helping a person to learn how to dance. I am helping a person to to change the world, really. I'm helping them to do something with their lives that dance is only a small part of that. And sometimes what I find, Clint, is we get lost because we have lost the idea or the mission that we first were on, right? We tend to get as a complacent and sometimes it just creeps up on us. It's not like we set out to have that happen, right? It just kind of creep up very suddenly, and we find ourselves now in that place. So I find if we can go back to what's my why, what is that? What's my story? What allowed me to start this whole thing? Why did I start this business of dance? What was it behind that? And sometimes if we can reconnect with that, and it could be a feedback story or testimonial going back through, maybe we have gotten some letters or emails or whatever it might be, and reread those things and say, you know what? This is why I do what I do. And this sometimes can restart the fire within us.
I'm so thrilled that you're joining us today because we have a really special guest who I've been following for a little while now. Her name is Kim McSwain, and she is a renowned choreographer and dance teacher. You probably know her. She's widely known for her masterclasses with top studios in the convention and competition circuit. She specializes in ballet, jazz, lyrical, and hip hop. Kim has worked with some amazing people. She's toured with the Adrenaline Remix as a master teacher and choreographer for 2 years. She's also toured with our friends from Jump and Break the Floor Productions. She's also danced with celebrities such as Jessica Simpson, Pink, Justin Timberlake, and Janet Jackson. And I wanted to get Kim on the call today because she's so passionate about training our dancers of tomorrow. She has so much wisdom to pass on to all of you. So Kim, thank you for taking the time today. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so humbled. I really appreciate it. Love talking to you. Thank you.
So Kim, why don't we start off? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do. And I'm so intrigued by your dance journey. How did you get into this world?
You know, I started dancing at a very young age. I was 3 years old, and I think it was a little bit more mom's passion than mine right from the beginning. But I think the most important thing that you should know is more than a dancer, more than a choreographer, I am an educator. And my journey started off, dance was my safe place, and dance is where I felt beautiful, and dance is where I felt smart. Dance was everything to me, and my dance teacher was everything to me. And growing up, I thought I wanted to be a famous dancer, and that was my journey. That's what I wanted to do, was to be on stage. And my career was cut very short. I actually did a head roll on stage and was paralyzed on my left side of my body. And it was a blessing in disguise, because at that point, I decided I would start teaching dance and absolutely fell in love with educating. And what I felt watching other people grow, and the wisdom that I could give them, and what I could teach them, and the success that I saw them having, was much more than I ever had myself. So I would never even call myself a dancer or a choreographer. I would much prefer to be called an educator, because that is where my passion lies, in being a teacher, because I'm giving more of myself than I ever did as a choreographer, as a dancer.
I love that. And that resonates with us, because it's exactly what our mission is as well with our studio owners. We are educators, and I love that you take that philosophy inside to the classroom. Kim, when you go into a classroom and you're about to take a class, what are you thinking about? How do you ensure that you give the best class each and every class that you teach? How do you kind of prepare for that from a mindset perspective?
I'll tell you what, Clint, I am not shy to let everybody know that I'm a believer and that I'm a Christian, and I never teach a class before that I don't watch church or that I don't research some way to inspire a child. And my one goal is to walk in and find out, please let me change a child's life. And my company is actually called Changing Lives because of that fact. I think that, yes, we are teaching dance, but from teacher to teacher, I always tell them dance is really the last thing that we're teaching. With thousands of kids coming in and out of our lives, Clint, there's going to be a handful of successful dancers, but more importantly, what we're teaching is successful people. Successful people that are going to come in and out of our lives and continue to go on and change this world in some form or fashion. Yes, we can teach good dance. Yes, we can teach good technique, but are we teaching good people? Are we teaching life lessons? So when I go in, that's my main goal, is to touch some child's life, to say something that is going to change the course of their life in some way or some shape or form. That's my main goal.
I love it. And I always say, dance is the vehicle to building, amazing, persistent, strong, resilient human beings. I know that it did that for me, and I see what it does for so many people. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. I mean, how do you facilitate those conversations, in the classroom? Let's say you're teaching a group and you've got a mix of abilities in there. How do you ensure that you're giving each child in the class, let's say you've got 20 or 30 or even more if you're on convention, how do you ensure that you are getting through to as many students as possible?
I think it's very important that you read your room. And I teach that to teachers a lot. My company now, when I go in, basically it's consulting in a dance education firm. So when I'm going in to teach teachers how to teach, that's one of the first things that I say is read your room. Watch the way that the kids respond when giving corrections. Make sure that you put your hands on every child. Make sure that you're giving eye contact to every child. Every child gets a correction, and that you're teaching them, not every child learns in the same manner. So in an hour class, in an hour and a half class, you really can, if you're maximizing your time properly, you can get to every child. So one of the things that you have to kind of pull yourself back from is, okay, you have this lesson plan where maybe you want to get to warm up, center floor, across the floor, combo, improv, all these certain things. But if you're really educating, and if you're really teaching the child, not just the dancer, you might not get to all of that. There might be other things that are a little bit more important that you need to touch upon if you read your class properly. If that makes sense to you. If you watch the way a child responds, if the child's eyes drop down when you say something, then maybe it's quite not important that they hit that triple pirouette. Maybe it's more important that, you say, you know what, guys? Let's just not worry about technique today. Let's just dance our feelings out. And then you turn those lights off and you give them a reason to come in that room and experience what it feels like to just dance. Because I tell you what, Clint, for me, that was my safe place. And for a lot of teachers, the generations have changed. And it's almost like, and I know teachers understand this now, you almost have to beg this generation's dance school out. You almost have to beg them to get comfortable in their own skin, where you never had to beg me as a child to come in and give 100%. We almost have to teach that now to these children. So I start from there. I start to teach the passion and the want and I want them to crave that feeling of to know what it feels like to go in that room and become whoever they want to be. Because that's really what dance is about, is walking in that room, shutting the door, and becoming whoever you want. That's your safe place where nothing is going wrong. That's your place where you feel safe and you feel loved and you feel cared about and you feel beautiful. Because these kids have to deal with the bullying and the social media and the things. They're just way more out in the open. They're way more out for people to say you're not good enough. Well, in my class, they are good enough. They're always good enough. And I think that's important for teachers to let them know, because you know what? Some kids were just not born to be professional dancers, and that's okay. And I want them to know that in my class. And I think that you have to kind of develop that bond. Kids are fantastic because they can spot a fake a mile away. So when you let them know that they're good enough for you, they will give you everything that they have. And it might take 6 months to a year before you can ever dig in deep and actually start training them. But if that's where you need to start, then that's where you need to start. That's what's more important.
I think this is so valuable, and for the reasons that you touched on. The world is very different. Students. I remember when I was dancing, I could leave school and not have to deal with any of that stuff. I could go to dance class and have an amazing dance class and be in my second home for 4 hours a night. And I loved it, and I didn't have to think about anything else until the next day back at school being bullied for dancing. But now it is 24/7, and all of these children, trying to project an image of their life and what they should be, and so they're always so. I find anyway, and I've seen it a lot of conventions and at workshops. No one really let's go like we used to.
No
classroom, because they're like thinking about that next photo they've got to take, that next selfie, the photo of the dance pose that they're putting on Instagram. I mean, it's a different world.
It's a different world, and too many kids base their self-worth off of a selfie. And you're thinking about the great dance legends of our past never had a social media page to build their followers. It was their dedication and drive that poured their craft and their traits. And that never goes out of style. But for some reason, this generation doesn't know that, Clint, because we applaud the Insta famous. We applaud that, those are the kids. You ask them who Baryshnikov is. You ask them who Gregory Hines is. You ask them who the Nicholas brothers is. They don't know. But they can tell you everybody who on Dance Moms are. And that for me is not okay. And when they step into my class, I am old school, and I will tell you that. And manners and dedication and drive, they never go out of style. And those are the things that are going to be applauded in my class. And when you step in my home, which is my space and my studio, and that's what I teach the teachers too. This is not a 9-to-5 job. We don't clock in and we don't clock out. This is our second home for these kids. We fall in love with these children. So guess what? You have the opportunity to be a light to these kids. You have an opportunity to change their life in some form or fashion. And you know what? We're a guardianship to them. So we need to take that role with the utmost leadership. Absolutely. And if we're the only ones that's teaching them that, then we're the only ones that's teaching them that. And that's okay. I just think that what we do is so fantastic. I think being a dance teacher is so fantastic. Someone said to me one time, I was wondering when I came to your class, I was a little down, and I thought, what am I going to do for my real job? She said, and then I heard you speak, and I thought, what am I talking about? This is a career. I said, you've got to be kidding me. This is a career like you've never seen in your life. You have a chance every day to change a kid's life. You've got the coolest job on earth.
Welcome to Transform My Dance Studio podcast series. My name is Lauren Ritchie, and I am thrilled to be guest hosting as I have picked the beautiful brain of Clint Salter a few times on my podcast, the Dance Podcast, and we had so much fun jamming out on different themes of both personal and professional development that I was thrilled to be asked to come and do the same here. So thank you, Clint, for having me.
Yeah, so excited to be continuing our conversation.
Yes. So this is an interesting one for me because I think that we both read a lot of business books and leadership books. And I also dove a little bit into some tribalism, believe it or not.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, Dr. Mario Martinez talks about tribal shaming and all the things. But so this idea of norms, normal behavior, accepted philosophies, behaviors, approaches. And yet we know from a lot of the business literature that the most successful businesses often disrupt the norm in some way. And this can be both inside the studio or in the dance community at large. And so I thought, oh my goodness, I think that we should riff on this a little bit.
Yeah.
Knowing that a lot of dance studio owners, they open their studio because they want to do something different. They want some kind of disruption, or they feel like they have something different to offer. So I'm wondering, what does the word disruption mean to you, and how do you see it show up in dance studio owners?
Yeah, sure. I think disruption is super interesting, especially because like now we're having more conversations around it because businesses think it's sexy to be a disruptor. You know, Airbnb, Uber, Facebook, these companies are seen to be disruptors. And I remember I was doing an interview and someone's like, how are you going to disrupt, this industry? And what's your views on disruption? And I'm like, I'm a lot less interested in disruption. I'm really interested in how to make the things people are already buying better, right? Like for me, that in itself is disruption without it being something new that we've never seen before. Let's be honest, that's going to be like 0.0000001% of ideas that actually turn into something that the world knows about. And so my philosophy is always about looking at what is currently existing. And this is a great example of a dance studio. Like you identified, people like love to dance. They like open a dance studio, sometimes because what they think is needed in their local area isn't there. There isn't someone that's doing it the way that they think it should be done. But it's not really disruption. It's really just bringing themselves into the business and making the business more about their values, being mission driven, having a strong vision for their business, and then going about running the studio the way that they think it should be ran from a training perspective, from a customer experience place. And so I think really that is really the key for me. And so disruption, I think, can take many different forms. But for me, I think disruption is how can you do something better than anybody else? And I think by thinking like that, you are disrupting, right? Because you are doing something that your customer hasn't experienced before, or your students haven't experienced, or your parents, or even your faculty, like from a leadership perspective. I think there's a lot of fascinating conversations that can come out of this.
Yeah, I'd love to share. I was having a casual conversation with one of your inner circle members, and they shared what I would view as almost like a bit of a disruption in the most beautiful way, writing at least, I believe it was 3 thank you or appreciation notes to their clients. It might have been every month, might have been every week, I'm not sure, but just that quality care and that tenderness that is rooted in values and mission, but also it could be considered almost disruptive because I've never heard of any other person doing that for their clients.
Yeah, we love letter writing in the inner circle. Totally. And I think it has to come back to like, what is your objective? Like, what are you trying to achieve? Because when I think, like I said, disruption is sexy. So when you go in and you're like, I'm going to disrupt the industry, I'm going to be the disruptor for the dance studios. You really have to go back to like, what is the objective? What are you trying to achieve? And then thinking about the action that you can take to achieve that objective. And I really think it's kind of as simple as that.
Yeah, I love that. So I find that a lot of the times, whether it's intentional or not, studios can get caught in a comparison game. And essentially, if even whether it's a small town or a big town, I'm learning it doesn't matter.
It does not matter. It still exists.
So how do you guide any kind of studio owner to really, I call it stay in their own lane, but maybe the word is differentiator. Like, how do you coach studio owners to find and really communicate what makes them special or different, or how that experience can be different for their clients?
Yeah, I think comparison hits all of us, right? Like none of us are immune to comparing ourselves, our businesses. There's that great Theodore Roosevelt quote, comparison is the thief of joy, which I love so much. And it's so true. And I think as well, there's a resurgence of this quote because when we look at things like social media, we are continuously comparing ourselves. And if I look at our dance studio community, a wonderful community that we work with, I often get questions like, I've noticed the studio up the road has started using the same language we do for our preschool classes. Or I've noticed that someone's using our colors, or someone's scheduled their recital for the same day as ours. Or I've seen them doing this and like we had that idea first. And so there's comparison going on continuously. And beforehand, I remember when I had my dance studio, I only really knew what was going on if I read an editorial in the newspaper, in the local newspaper, or people were advertising in the local newspaper, or I saw studios at competitions. Otherwise, I had no idea what was going on. And I quite like that, because you put your blinders on, like the horses, you put the blinders on and you can only see straight in front of you. And I often reference having the blinders on with our studio owners so that people stay in their lane and they stay focused on what their version of success looks like, or their version of what they want to achieve. I mean, social media, there's so many studies now around, as our increase of scrolling the news feed, as that goes up, our health is our mental health is going down. And when it comes to social media, like for me, I'm not a user of Instagram, but I have an Instagram account to like stay up to date with like what my friends are doing. And I follow like 12 people on Instagram, because I didn't want to be bombarded with all of these, front of house images. And that's the thing, right? We are often comparing, our backstage to someone's front of stage, right? We see these photos, they're having this great holiday, they're, in this loving relationship, but we don't know what's going on with these people.
Yeah.
And I think that is, and we don't know what's going on inside of these dance studios. We see smiling faces, we see happy teachers. And believe me, I've been a part of a lot of these businesses, and behind the doors, they're broke. They've got no money. They're getting loans to like pay for their team members, and life is not great. They're at the studio 70 hours a week. And so I really want to encourage people, if you are looking on social media to see what other people are doing, if you're caught in this trap of comparison, I really want you to kind of reevaluate how you're using social media. For me, for Facebook, I have newsfeed eradicator, which means I don't see anyone's newsfeed on my desktop. I see it if I'm using like Facebook on my phone. I don't have the app on my phone. I haven't had the app for a while, but I can log in like through Safari. I mean, I make it really hard for me to like get into these things, but I still use them because a lot of our groups for our business are on Facebook. But I'm really conscious as well of like how things make me feel, so if I'm looking at other businesses and I'm feeling envious of, what someone else is doing, or this event that someone else had, I always have to kind of check in with myself. And I feel like envy is, can be such a great tool, because envy can do two things for you. Firstly, it can make you bitter, or the better version is it can make you better, right? And envy is generally seeing something in someone else or in another business that you want that you don't have. And you can then like be gossipy about that business and make up stories and like attack them, because that's the only thing that you feel like what you can do and how you can react in that moment. Or you can identify, okay, I'm feeling something's going on here. Like I've seen this dance studio or this competition with all these trophies and all of these amazing costumes, and they've, nailed it, and they're in my local area and they're my competition. And you can look at that and use it as inspiration to be better, to identify, okay, what do I need to do? Like use that as motivation. I mean, for me, it's like such a thrill using it that way. Okay, what's going on here that I want? And how can I achieve that? Such a good way to use envy versus the negative, heavy emotion we can sometimes get drawn into when we become envious of someone or something. So yes, comparison is everywhere. It'll never go away. We'll always have it. But honestly, the best type of comparison is when you're using it like on yourself, right? Like, okay, how can I be better today? Like, how can I be a better studio owner? How can I be a better dancer? How can I be a better dance teacher, a choreographer, a creative? How can I just show up and be like 1% better today or 0.5% better? Because we are our only competition, because no one has the life that we have lived. No one has gone through the same journey. So we really can't compare, because we are all so different.
Thank you so much for celebrating the 400th episode of the Transform My Dance Studio podcast with us. We couldn't have made this incredible milestone without the support of our listeners and the dance studio community. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. And we'd love you to leave us a review to help us reach even more dance studio owners around the world. For continued support and free resources to help grow your studio and change your life, make sure to join us inside the Dance Studio Owners Association at dsoa.com/join. See you next week.